spinner. Yeah. Come on, do the thing. Wow, that takes longer than usual. Or is that the new way of showing me that? Hello and welcome to the JavaScript SEO office hours on April 7th. With this lockdown, I can't tell, but from the weather, it's clearly April here in Zurich. We have seen sunshine, rain, and snow in a single day at this point. Also some wind. So yes, we definitely, I think it's April 7th. Yes, it's April 7th. This time it's the right date. Yeah, we do these bi-weekly, roughly, where you can basically have a post on our community tab in the youtube.com/search central, Google Search Central channel. You can ask your questions there in the thread, or you can join these live recordings as these wonderful people around me here have done today. We do not have YouTube questions this time around, so I'll open the floor to questions from the audience. Feel free to either unmute yourself, raise your hand if someone else is speaking, or use the chat if you don't want to talk out loud today. Do we have any questions? Silence.
Okay, so I'll go first.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Giacomo.
Hi, Martin. So the first question, I don't know, is in the last JavaScript SEO meeting, you say that Chrome is improving and blah, 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 all the system is improving, and so you are getting less JavaScript error than before in the rendering inside WRS. Can you give us I don't know, if you can now, or you can later on Twitter, a list of the most common errors in WRS? The first one you say is a resource is blocked by robots.txt or not reachable. But I don't know if there are other issues that are very common, so we can just have some things to.
Oh, that's a fantastic question, Giacomo. I should, but I can't, because the thing is, we have a bunch of data. We basically have the logs that we get from each website in the WS, so the JavaScript console logs, like whatever you would see in the JavaScript console, we also get that. We highlight that in Search Console if you run a live test. We have this information. I have not had the time or expertise yet to actually go through it and categorize it so that I could see trends. That's a project that I have on my long list of things that I want to do. I haven't done that so far, because so far no one has cared. So I thought no one is interested. But now I know at least one person who's interested. And maybe there's more people out there who might be interested. And then I have a good reason to actually go through and try these things out again. And I need to find out where the data sits again, because I had access to it at some point, but I'm not sure if I still have. But that's a good question. I'll see if I can get that information out, and then maybe we can even put out a blog post on the most common JavaScript errors that we are seeing in rendering. Good question.
Thank you.
First question. So you have more than one?
Yeah, I don't know if other has question. If not,
let's see. Floor is open.
Yeah.
Now go for it.
Okay. It's not a problem. Okay, so the second question is about the layout information. So when you render a website, you are getting the render tree, layout tree, blah, 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 and you have all the position for the element in a page. How bad is not being able to get those information for problem, not for WRS problem, but for problem like you can't get the CSS and so on. So the first problem I can guess is the mobile check, so that's
friendliness.
That's the first one. But there are also other problem like understanding better the page, understanding where the main content is, and so on.
Yeah. So generally speaking, it's not that big of a problem because as long as we have the content, we at least know what's hypothetically on the page. But similar to, so the question is very similar to how important is to have semantically correct or a valid HTML, right? If you don't, that's fine. If everything is a div on your page, that's okay-ish for search. It will not necessarily be okay for accessibility tools. It will not necessarily be okay for your users. And it will definitely rob us some semantic information. So like the more information we have, the better it is, the easier it is for us to make not educated guesses, but like to know what you think is important, to know what looks like it's the centerpiece. If we don't have that information, we don't know. That happens sometimes, and it's not like we can't do anything with that page or we will not rank it or anything. It's just we have less information than otherwise. So that's always going to be a little bit of an issue. That's also one of the reasons why we advocate against people trying to simplify things by excluding CSS resources. That's actually not making things simpler, it's making things harder. It makes things less information rich for us, so that's also not a good idea. And last but not least, as you said, there are signals such as mobile friendliness that might be impacted when things go wrong or go sideways there. So it's not the most important thing. It's not a big problem that you really need to address if it's not there. If it's there, it just gives us additional information that we can work with.
Thank you very much.
Very happy to. Do we have more questions? We have smart people in the audience, so I expect more questions. If not, then I'll refresh YouTube one more time. No, still no questions coming in.
Okay, so no problem at all. No problem at all. So I don't remember, probably a week ago, I asked on Twitter about the queue priority. I'm not going to ask about that again because I can understand it's an implementation detail. But can a page with an error blocking other page from the same origin to rendering? Let's say we have 1,000 pages from the same domain. This because you probably have some sort of concurrency. So I can understand that you're splitting all the page through a bunch of machine. But if one of more of these pages are not rendering correctly, and you have to render again those, you still processing other page before. So like moving the page in a different queue, like arrow queue. I don't know. I don't want to say anything about that.
So there's nothing that would like block other pages just for one page having a problem. Fundamentally, there's just different queues with different service level agreements, so to speak, or service level objectives. So for instance, live tests are usually prioritized in a separate queue and going to separate instances because that just needs to be a lot faster. Whereas when indexing, when the whole rest of the process of the signal collection might take a few hours, minutes, then the rendering time does not necessarily become a problem. So we could potentially render a little later. And an error would just mean that we have to retry. So that's like the only real difference that happens to pages that have errors happening or preventing them from being rendered is that we retry them. That's the only thing. They go back into the queue, they're being retried, but it's not that we are like keeping tabs on, oh, this page from this website has a problem, so we now have to hold back all the other pages until we have done this page. That's not the case.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. If you're not sure if you're like running over someone else's desire to ask questions, there's a raised hand button at the lower part of this wonderful tool called Meet that you can use to get my attention as well. Or you can use the chat in this lovely tool too. But please ask more questions.
I have also a question.
Awesome. Hi, Thomas.
Hi. So it's regarding the M. websites. So there are still a lot of M. websites. And as far as I know, as long as the setup is correct with the canonical, with the rel alternate, the website can perform as good as with a responsive layout. What happens if the www version has a lot of links. The mobile version, so the m.dot version, has not that much link on the layout. The AMP version has, again, all the links, internal links, as the www version. So long story short, the mobile version has only a few links on the website, so internal linkings. Does it have an effect on the performance? Because if it's a mobile first index, so which with the page but Google crawls, and if Google comes with a mobile crawler, Google crawls the m.dot version and sees only these few links, internal links, or how does it work, or what's the secret behind it?
That's not really a JavaScript specific question, and with the link graph and ranking, that's where I'm out. I don't know.
Okay.
Don't know. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Good.
I would suggest asking that question in John's office hours, but in general, what I can say is, like, if the m.dot version has a very different linking structure, and we would eventually prefer crawling the mobile version, then we would probably see that as the actual page structure and not necessarily the desktop one. It's always a good idea to try to keep them as consistent as possible, because that definitely minimizes the opportunity for us to misunderstand the way that your page structure looks like. Okay. But I think generally, if it works now, it should probably continue to work fine in the future.
Okay.
All right.
Cool. Thanks.
No worries. More questions? Oh yeah, there we go. Raise the hand. Yes, Michael.
Yeah.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Martin. I'm the guy who made the post. Does Google currently have problems with the pre-render service that thereby 500 errors arise? Our technicians told us that Google leaves connections open, and it thus comes to a traffic jam that no further connections are possible. And I set you a bit.ly link so that you can see the original page.
Where did you post that? Because
I posted this on YouTube in the comment section. But can I post a link here now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah? Because in the YouTube comments, I'm only seeing time warning for Europeans.
Okay, then you didn't see the other thing, because I couldn't get in before. I tried again and again. So,
I noticed that I accepted you, and then you didn't come through, and that worried me.
Okay. So, where can I post you?
There's a chat link in here on the lower right-hand corner. There should be like a little chat button.
Chat. Besprechungsdetails. Okay, it doesn't show me the chat.
No? Interesting.
Up here. It's on the it's on the right upper.
Okay. In that case, it's different places for different people. I think I have like some experiments enabled here. Right. Yes.
Okay. And it went better now. And the pages are returning to the Google search results. But the Google Search Console told us that we have 503s, and the technicians told us that it is the problem with the. Wait, I post in the comment section. I post everything so you can read it. Sometimes it's easier to read than to hear it if someone talks.
But maybe it's in the. Let's see. Maybe it's in the previous ones. I don't know. Okay. I should not open our YouTube channel because there's always something making noise. Maybe here. No, I'm still not seeing it. Damn it. Here you go. There's Google. Our technicians told us that Google is connected.
I mean, I can send you now the original page, but I didn't want to post it on YouTube. It doesn't look like a link bait. Yeah.
I understand that. The page itself seems to be, so at least like the home page is definitely listing, and I'm wondering if I can see. Come on, don't do this to me. Our lovely internal tools.
So the technical people told us that Google leaves connections open.
That would surprise me.
And then we have a traffic jam, and so now we have to find out. Yeah, can we believe what we heard, and if yes, maybe you just say, this is the point. This is what I would love most.
Do we? So I don't think we leave connections open. That would very, very much surprise me if we were
Okay.
to do that, because then other people would be complaining. That's
Yeah.
the thing. In general, we don't have any special treatment for pre-rendering services or anything. We just one thing I would check with them is if we are crawling with HTTP 2 or if we are crawling with HTTP 1 when we are crawling. That might be something. If anything, I would be not surprised to see glitches in HTTP 2 crawling. Let's see. Does it tell me something here? No, we seem to be crawling with HTTP 1 as far as I can tell. Yeah. Let's see. What does it say in terms of crawling information? Indexing crawler is mobile.
The page is also HTTP2 ready. So
that is possible. It's just we haven't rolled it out for everyone just yet. I do see that there was a peak around March 17th.
Yes.
Escape fragment. Okay. Let's see. Let me.
So everybody else who also wants to join us, the link is in the chat.
I wish I could show you how we're debugging this in our internal tools, but unfortunately I can't. Okay, so then that website's host. I need the host, not the URL. So I'll remove this part. And I would like to see how our crawler has done in the past. Yeah, so there is definitely, oh, someone wants to join. I'll jump over. Oh, another person I know. But again, it seems to not have worked properly. Dang. So this is strange. This is very, very strange. I am seeing a peak in terms of connections that we had in parallel around that time when you were seeing issues there. I would have to check with the team, with the Googlebot team to see why there was an increase in connections at the time, and I could imagine that your tech people are not wrong to say like the connection stayed open longer, or at least there were more connections than usual. But that happened beforehand and didn't raise any problems. So it's not an unusual thing for us to use more connections. What is unusual is that this time it caused 500 responses on your server. That's interesting. What is the error threshold? And there's also, from our perspective, there aren't more errors than usual either. Huh, strange. That's an interesting one. I'll probably have to get back to that question probably over Twitter once I know more about this. But it seems to be that it's an HTTP1 crawl. The connections should not have stayed longer, should not have stayed open longer than usual.
Okay.
But there were 500 responses that I would investigate on your end, because we only, as far as we can go, we know that we got a 500 back, but they are back to normal. So this doesn't seem to be a problem anymore. So I'm guessing you changed something, or it went back to normal on its own. I don't know.
Okay. So shall I tweet you directly, or?
Yeah, you can respond, like basically tweet at me, and then I'll try to track this.
Okay,
interesting is also that the response size went up when we were seeing 500 errors.
Okay.
That's funky.
Okay. Yeah, and so we always get some feedback from the agency, and yeah, and then our rankings are dropping, and and we never know what's going on technically in the behind there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
Okay,
might
so-
be a hosting related issue on your end, but yeah, interesting.
But SDA also host big running events for a energy drink. They should have enough power regularly to solve that. Yeah.
They should,
Okay,
but you
so
would
we
be
will see.
surprised.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Cool.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
I'll take a look and see if anything from our side comes up.
Mhm.
All right. Sweet. Anyone else wants to ask a question? I don't see any other raised hands. Was a really nice use of the raised hand feature. I like that. I like that feature a lot. It avoids talking over each other. That's nice. Hi, Snejana. Oh, Gabe. Gabe raised.
Hello.
Yes. Hi, Snejana.
Nice to.
Hi, Gabe.
Nice to. Hello, Martin. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry. Crosstalk.
Terrific. No, I just want to make sure. No worries. It's nice to officially speak with you after kind of stalking you via video and watching all your wonderful tips and tutorials.
Oh God.
I don't have, I guess, a specific site question. I guess some general questions, just around analyzing, just kind of your thoughts. One of the things that I think that kind of coming up against with the page experience update coming out is identifying, page load speeds and that kind of thing. And traditionally, I think as SEOs, when it comes to JavaScript, there's always this input to externalize it and call it in and that kind of thing. And now there's more feedback about inlining certain scripts. So, you can kind of pick up your speed a little bit more and that kind of thing. Do you have any suggestions on any tools that help like kind of identify when to inline or which scripts to inline? Sometimes when you're kind of going through all especially when you're not a JavaScript developer, you're kind of going through all the script trying to identify which ones are activating, which parts of code and that kind of thing. So I didn't know if there's any secretive tools or maybe things that you keep close to your chest that you might want to throw out here on our call.
So my first secret weapon is to not inline but remove JavaScript whenever possible. But that's obviously not always the case, and you will not be able to remove all JavaScript. You'll just be able to remove unused bits relatively easily. What I do like as a JavaScript developer is the tree shaking ability of most of the bundlers. So I think Webpack has it built in. I'm not sure if Rollup can do it as well. But like pretty much all the good bundlers out there are able to remove unused code paths. So that's definitely a win because code that you don't have to download is just saved bandwidth and saved processing power to begin with. When it comes to inlining JavaScript, you want to inline the bits and pieces that you absolutely, essentially, really, truly, 100% need to get the users the content and the core experience. Any kind of tracker is not that, right? You want to load the trackers as late as possible in the process. Any kind of analytic solutions, any kinds of, I don't know, stuff that is not core to the experience of the user should be moved down. I think some of the JavaScript frameworks have a mode which is called server-side rendering plus hydration, where they inline the core runtime of themselves plus what's needed to get the core content to then hydrate and actually become a fully functional JavaScript application. They should do that automatically. So I think Next.js has that built in. I think Nuxt.js has that built in if you work with Vue.js. I'm not sure about Angular Universal because I think Angular Universal goes a slightly different route. There is, oh God, what's it called? There's a tool that I've never tried myself, but I have people here singing the praises for it. I think it's called Razzle Dazzle or something, if I remember correctly. I know the name is fantastic, but the tool is apparently good and works across different frameworks. But yeah, the question, like, there is not really much tooling around to identify which ones to inline, because that's a very subjective, very hard to automatically answer question. It's only in sitting down with the developers and thinking about, like, what is the absolute minimum JavaScript that we need to get the content there. And then the answer 95% of the times, if not 98% of the times, is not, oh, we inline this and this and this. It's more like we need to change the architecture in which we are building our application in, most likely pointing towards server-side rendering of some flavor. No easy answer. I'm sorry, Gabe.
Yeah, that. It depends, right? It depends.
I mean, I try to avoid the word or the phrase "it depends," but it does. It does, unfortunately, in the end, depend.
Certainly
because
does.
with most applications, you'll end up with having more or less the runtime of your framework, which is huge in its own, and inlining that does not really help. It minimizes a little bit in terms of network latency, but you could probably get the same result by preloading or prefetching that blob early on in the header versus actually inlining it. So inlining is a foot gun. Very, very careful not to shoot yourself.
That's good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. With JavaScript, a lot of things are foot guns. That's the tricky, gnarly reality.
It certainly feels that way sometimes.
Because it is. JavaScript is fantastic until it isn't. All right. Anyone else? As I said, you can use the chat. You can use the raise hand feature, or if no one speaks up, you can just... Ah, yeah, there we go. Snezhana.
Hi. Yeah, I have kind of a question where I was wondering if it's possible to get some kind of ups and downs in crawling if we actually implement the banner that is cookie privacy specifically for Switzerland, because now we have this kind of regulation where we need to, say to users like privacy settings, all of these things. And we've seen some of the core Web Vitals, traffics, everything going up and down. And actually, for some time, the content was picked up as the primary one, even though the banner was waiting for the whole content to load and then up. So I was wondering if it's something that just happens normally, that we should wait for a while, or is it something that we should do, like contact the service provider and tell them, like, you know, this is happening, we don't know how to do it, because they say from their side it's all like optimized, let's say.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. In general, I would always talk to the tool providers, because if they're not being held accountable for the tool, then they kind of let things slip that they shouldn't let slip in the first place. In general, I would assume that we are soon going to get better at detecting these things, because we're continuously working at like improving the metrics, especially for LCP, FID, and CLS. CLS being probably revamped at some point soon, because I've seen that the team is not super happy with how the metric works right now. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, these kind of fluctuations can certainly happen from these kind of patterns and implementations. And I don't really have a general answer to these things, because I have tried out a few solutions, and at least like the lower profile kind of self-baked ones work well. It seems to be that I have received a bunch of reports for content management platforms and content management services where there have been issues specifically with CLS and cookie consent banners.
Specifically for that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not the first one to report this. I have an ongoing program or process of looking into these things. I wish I could do that more publicly, but in order to not accidentally like shame any providers, I'm not doing this publicly. I'm basically like looking at this both on the side of what can we do to avoid these problems, on the other hand, also what do they need to do, because I wish us to have guidelines and guidance for these tool providers that you and their customers, as well as their own developers, can refer to fix the problem. Because in the end, if it's a problem in the metrics and it's not just a measurement error, then that's a problem for actual users, and we should all work together to improve that. So no finite answer yet, but we are definitely looking into it.
And are you going to publish something regarding that on Twitter or something, just some kind of conclusions maybe?
Once I don't have any conclusions yet because I'm early on in the process. I'm still receiving, basically I'm in the reconnaissance phase where I'm taking in input. So if you are, there's a tweet, okay, let's see if I can find my tweet. Long time ago, I tweeted that I am asking for people's, like basically for examples of this happening. So if I find the tweet, and if not, then you can just like send me a URL where that is happening. You can use a direct message on Twitter. My direct messages are open for this kind of stuff. I don't normally answer direct messages, but I definitely receive them and look into them.
This is just one of the largest Switzerland classifieds websites, so I think that you probably can get an idea.
I think I know where to look then. Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Is it the one with T in the name? Yeah. Okay. In that case, I know where to look. Fantastic.
Yeah, because we've seen like the Core Web Vitals going really, really crazy, and the overall site performance dropping incredibly low since we have implemented this. And there has been some confusion also with the tracking, and we're working on it in analytics, and everything just seemed to be like boiling out. So, you know, I mean, it's definitely largely from the provider side, I would say.
So I am in the reconnaissance phase where I'm basically taking in the information and looking at it. And once I have conclusions, I'll publish them both in the docs and probably also over Twitter. And who knows, maybe even in a video, who knows what's going to happen. This is 2021. Everything is wild.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Very good question.
Thanks.
Again, a fantastic use of the raise hand feature. I know that, some people that have joined us have already left again. Sad. We do have 15 more minutes. So any further questions? Yes, Maria raises hand the old style way.
I know there is a feature right there to raise your hands, but blame the code. I'm a little bit slower. So I'm going to ask a question from the team where I work, the team at the new place where I work for, and probably you've had this question many times. So here I go. So the question is, what is the best way to clean unused JavaScript codes for a page? Obviously, what is the best method to recommend to the developers?
No, that's actually, I haven't had that question before, so that's good. Oh. I like that. That's good. Nice. Or at least I can't remember, but then again, I can't remember what I had yesterday for lunch. So I don't have a code that I could blame it on. I'm just dumb and can't remember things. That's why I make computers do all my work. So that's, oh God, okay, don't lynch me. That depends a little bit on how the website's built. If you are using a framework, the likelihood that you are also using some sort of bundler or build tool that combines the JavaScript together in the end, because what you have is, okay, stepping back a little bit, so that, because I'm pretty sure like most people will actually benefit from this explanation. So what usually happens when you build JavaScript web apps or websites that heavily rely on JavaScript is that you end up with some sort of dependency tree. So, for instance, you might use, I don't know, let's say like React. React itself is a relatively small core module that then has a thing that's its template sync system is called JSX. That's usually like a separate module that uses other things. And like basically you end up with lots of small bits and pieces of JavaScript that are interconnected and basically are combining into your JavaScript application. And then eventually you write a little bit of code that makes the thing do what you want it to do. So the way that it works in most frameworks is that you have a huge amount of code that comes from third parties that is not your own. And then you write a little bit of code to glue this together roughly. And then what you end up with is a dependency tree. So like my thing here uses this thing here, which uses this thing here, which uses React, which uses this thing and that thing and this thing. And they all need to be compiled down to a proper like combination of things. What easily happens is that some of these dependencies are larger than others. Let's say like, I don't know, I am using a library that provides a bunch of basic functions. Like it provides 100 useful functions that you kind of need every day. But I'm only using 2 out of these 100 functions. Then what easily happens is that by bundling all these things together, it sees like, oh yeah, so this utility here that has like these 100 functions is needed by this other thing here. So I'll drag it into the big blob of JavaScript that we are shipping to everyone. Even though 98% of it are unused code. They just download, they have to be executed, they have to be parsed, they have to be executed, but they're never actually running themselves. It's just like these 98 functions just sit in your bundle and they don't do anything. This can be partially automated with tools like when you're using Webpack, for instance, you can enable tree shaking. Basically, the fundamental term that you're looking for with whatever you're using is you want to be tree shaking. So you basically take the tree and shake off every loose apples that you don't actually need. So with tree shaking, these 98 functions would probably fall down. Why do I say probably? Because it depends on how the developers are using it. That's the tricky bit. What you can, to a certain degree, do though, is in the developer tools, you can. Oh, where was that? Was that sources or was that under more tools? I think it's under more tools. Yes, actually, hold on. Let me share my screen real quick. Never a bad idea to share my screen, but let's do it anyway. I like to live dangerously. Why am I doing this to myself? I think I never learn. I think
you're a good person and you like to help us all.
I don't know. I think I brought this up a few times already, but I'll bring it up again. Like they did a study with earthworms is probably how you pronounce that. And they found out that they need 3,000 repetitions on average to learn something. So anyway, so why am I bringing this up? Because I'm an earthworm when it comes to learning things. Let's zoom in a little bit so that we can actually see what's happening here. So I'm on a random website. You might have heard of it. It's apparently a social network that has a bird as its logo. And then in the developer tools, so how did I get here? Actually, let me get back one more time. I right-click, I say inspect. I'm not sure if you're actually seeing this right now, but I guess you might. I don't know. Right-click, inspect, then I get the developer tools. Then I go to the 3 little dots, and then say more tools, coverage. And in coverage, if I am reloading the page and get the coverage information, we are seeing that there is a huge bundle of JavaScript and 60% of the bytes are not actually being used. Okay. Be very, 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 very careful with that. Because the thing is, if I were to actually log in now and do something, I could probably try that. The number would not be accurate because it's very, very likely most of this, okay, it doesn't have my data. Most of the data that is unused is probably used later on when I continue to like actually work with this thing. So this number might go up, but it is a good idea to like have a look where this comes from. Shared core, vendors main. Vendors main actually has lots of unused stuff apparently. At least like a third of it is unused. So I would start looking here, because vendors is probably like some third-party code, and there might be bits and pieces that you can get rid of. And you can test this in development. You don't have to do this in production. So developers can like give it a try every now and then they need to interpret these results. The 27% does not mean that 27% of the code is actually unused. It is unused at the time when I took this trace, but it still might help them to find out where to look for things where they can save bytes and JavaScript. And then, as I said, tree shaking in whatever system you're using is a good idea if that's supported. If it's not supported, you might want to consider moving to a system where you can tree shake and import things more selectively. But again, there's no like automated tool that you just throw your JavaScript in and all the unused code falls out. Unfortunately, that would be awesome.
Thank you. It was a very detailed answer.
I'm trying my best. I thought there's like context that is worthwhile sharing.
And definitely will help once the recording is ready to go back and kind of rewind again.
Have a look. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Any other questions? We already said we have the chat. You can just say something. Hey, Gabe raises his hand. That would be the third option.
I'm coming back for a second one. I'll try to make it quick because I know we're short on time. But just curious, random thought. Sometimes when you identify a potential JS conflict, with the website, you might then go to the Google, use like a site operator, then check the cache in the index, and then go to check as like text-based cache. And then if you see your hyperlink there, oh, it's rendering. If you don't, if it's text, then you're like, oh, it's not rendering. So, but there's a debate that I had the other day with another SEO that was saying, well, Google's rendering JavaScript. That technique doesn't necessarily work anymore. So is that I guess entirely true, or kind of true, not true? And B, if it is true, is there a more effective way to kind of cross-check your observations?
Yes, it's true. Yes, there's a better way to cross-check your observations. So the cache, oh God, the cache is a really, really old feature. And the only purpose that it has is to give you something should the website have been removed or has gone down for the moment, so that you can say like, I really want this piece of content. It's only on this one website. This website has not been available for the last week. You may find something in the cache, which means that the indexing is a pipeline of lots of different moving parts. And at some point in this, the cache might filter out and siphon off the version that it shows you in the cache. It's an unmaintained feature. We have it because I still think it provides value, even though it is not under development anymore. But the version of content you get in the cache is kind of random. It might just be from a previous crawl. It might be straight from the crawl, so we haven't actually run any of the JavaScript yet. It might have picked up the snapshot after rendering has happened. It's luck. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that doesn't mean that there has been a fundamental issue or that we haven't been rendering anything. We are rendering every page. Every page gets indexed based on the rendered version, unless edge cases, but that's really, really unlikely. And then if you want to check that and see what we would see in rendering, with certain caveats, you can see that in Google Search Console live test. That's the rendered version, as well as in the mobile friendly test or in the rich results test. These things are using the same pipeline as Googlebot uses. The caveat being that the indexing uses very strong caching and can retry multiple times, which means that sometimes it might take like half an hour for us to actually get everything downloaded properly and like get everything fresh and everything like that, which we can't really do when you're sitting in front of the testing tool. So the testing tool skips the cache because we kind of want to give you like the latest version of what we would get if there wouldn't be any caches involved. And you might see the infamous other error in the testing tools, which usually just means this took too long. So if we are like not able to fetch the JavaScript file, then it just took too long until we actually got around fetching it and putting it into the cache, which for indexing would not matter, because the indexing would go render, oh, it failed because there like one resource wasn't ready. So we'll basically have us notified once the resource has been fetched. Then eventually the resource is being fetched, put in the cache, and then we are rendering again, and then we have the rendered version. So sometimes you see false negatives in the testing tools, as in like, oh, this looks like we have a problem. It's other error. That usually means it's not an actual problem, unless it says something else. Like if it's a different error source, then that's a good sign for an actual problem. But if it's other error, that usually means a resource fetch took too long because it hasn't gotten the position in the queue that it needed to continue to finish in the time within the time limit that we have set, which is very low for the testing tools, because we don't want you to sit in front of a loading bar for half an hour. But the testing tools are your best bet to actually see what the rendering has come up with. Yeah,
definitely. But if you don't have access to Search Console, say you're analyzing whether it be other websites you're competing against, trying to determine how they're building their websites, is there kind of a quick and easy way to check off on that? If the
which results test, mobile friendly test,
but not the don't mess with the text cache anymore, huh?
I wouldn't, because as I said, it's pretty random what you'll get, and drawing conclusions from pretty much random data is risky.
Yeah, it's never fun, right? It makes a good screenshot, but it doesn't tell the story.
It does, yeah.
So just to make sure, if I find a text like what should be a link, but it's text based and it's anchor in the text-based cache, that is not a sign that there is an issue with that link being crawled because it's blocked by JavaScript.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I lost the debate then. All right.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
It's just that old school SEO stuff. That's just what we used to do.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I can't keep up with you, Martin.
I'm so sorry, Gabe. I don't always win people bets, but sometimes I do, and unfortunately, you're not one of the debates in this case. I'm sorry.
All right. We'll work this out offline. We got to figure this out when we come live. So All right.
Awesome, sweet. Thanks a lot. And Mihai has raised his hand as well.
Hey, Martin.
Hi. How's it going?
I'm good. Quick question regarding JavaScript loading priorities. And this is mostly regarding platforms where you don't really have a lot of access to change things. So, for example, I'm working on a site that's on a popular e-commerce commercial platform. Rhymes with Shopify. Wait, I did that wrong. Obviously, you cannot really go around and change things and how are they loading stuff. You do have some control, but not like it's your own server or anything. But I noticed that for any plugins that you're using with the platform, they do their best. They use a JavaScript function to load the third-party JavaScript files after the onload event. So they're not using defer or async. They're using that JavaScript function to basically load everything after the onload event, which is very nice on their behalf. So I'm curious if there's any difference in terms of how Google sees things, whether you're using, let's say you have a vendor third-party JavaScript file, whether you're putting it in the footer and using the defer attribute versus using this kind of trick to move everything after the onload event.
No, we don't care. For us, that doesn't make a difference. It's just a different moment when we discover the resource, probably, but that's okay. That's fine.
Okay, so as long as the actual content gets loaded the same, doesn't really matter when the rest of the craft comes up. Okay.
I love how you immediately say like that's craft. There we go.
As you mentioned, like tracking things,
Yeah.
you know, other things that are chat bubbles and things like that, things that are necessary towards actually rendering the main content of the page. And as I mentioned, not everybody has the not luxury, but not everybody has the chance to work with their own server, their own platform. So they have a lot of websites are using this third-party platform. So it's again very nice that they do not only they defer it, but they actually defer it all the way after the onload event. So I was just curious whether it's the best practice or if there's any difference in terms of how Google perceives those or renders those files.
I don't see any reason for us to treat or perceive this differently. No.
Mainly because the onload event can be like, I don't know, 5 seconds, 6 seconds away from, you know, the load time.
That's true.
Versus the defer, you still see the resource right away. You just defer it.
Yeah, so the resource discovery, that's a thing. That's going to be different, but we don't really care as long as the content is there. We'll probably trigger like a late resource fetch for these resources, but doesn't hurt. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. Thanks for the question, Mihai. Oh, Dave's raising his hand. Oh God. Okay. Ooh. Oh my.
That's a bit rough. I'm not that bad, am I? Yeah, basically, it's just a question about if you circumvent the cache for certain things by doing post requests or timestamping or something. Does it really cause an issue other than just in crawl budget? I mean, naturally, you'd want to cache everything you could anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like it does impact your crawl budget. It has a potential.
You've gone on mute, mate.
How did I mute? When did I mute myself? Anyway, it doesn't. I think like it's one of the top sentences 2020 and probably 2021 as well. Is like you're on mute. Can you hear me now? No. I think that was like an ad campaign for a mobile network at some point. Like, can you hear me now? So besides the crawl budget issue that you already mentioned, where pretty much every single time we are requesting that resource that is cache busting in one way or the other, you might run into a potential pitfall. I'm saying potential because I've never seen this being an actual problem, but there is a potential for it becoming a problem if you do it excessively, which is if you are skipping the cache, you are reducing the what's the English word for it? The resilience against timeouts, right? Because if we have a cached resource that we can't fetch afresh for a rendering run, then we need to wait for the resource to actually come through live. And if the crawler does not have the budget to actually fulfill this within the deadline, then you might actually not get the resource in time for rendering, and then you might see a failing rendering run, and then we have to retry that again. And then if the issue persists, it might increase the time until we actually get a successful render. Again, I've not seen this in practice yet, but I've not seen that many people in practice using post to fetch resources for the website to avoid the cache. So
I think so. I could imagine it's something more prevalent once GraphQL grows, because that's post by default, isn't it? So.
Yeah. And I've seen GraphQL being like, oh, GraphQL doesn't work with Googlebot. And I'm like, no, it does work. Why would it not work? Oh, here is an example where the content doesn't come in. I'm like, oh, yeah, but that's because it continuously times out and you're posting, so we can't actually cache anything. So, yeah. But if you were to cache bust, I would probably do that with query strings that have timestamps that are more or less predictable, as in like maybe like every day the timestamp changes or something like that, if you really, really, really need to cache bust. But full disclaimer, I'm not encouraging anyone to cache bust. Inviting whole new scenarios of problems. You're welcome. Thank you very much for the question.
Cheers.
So repeating myself for the new arrivals, you can post your questions in the chat as well. That is, as I learned from Michael, on the right-hand top corner. I think I'm running like some sort of early access internal version where it's in the lower right-hand corner. So eventually it might move from the right or up corner to the right or lower-hand corner. You can also use the raise hand feature, which is somewhere down there, probably. I think it's down there, right? Those who have raised their hands, it's somewhere down here. Or you can just speak if there is awkward silence for a long period of time, which there never is because I talk too much. So any further questions? We are already 7 minutes over. We can do like another 3 minutes over. It won't matter. Giacomo is actively thinking about a question. I like that. It's like...
I have had 10 questions, but I can't just...
We actually have, is it Amin or Amine raising his hand? So go ahead. Oh, I think you're on mute. At least we're not hearing you. Or I'm not hearing you. I don't... Does everyone else hear him and I just don't? No, okay.
I can't hear him either.
Okay, good. So there's something in your microphone settings that prevents us from hearing you. No. I was like very carefully lip reading, but I'm not good enough to actually. Nope. I know that problem because I have like multiple microphones and...
Hi, sorry.
Yes.
I got my microphone,
No
which
worries.
is external, and I have to change the settings.
I have two external microphones and an internal one because the one that I'm speaking to you with right now is not good enough for the podcast. So I have another one for the podcast, and then I have the internal one, and it's always fun.
Cool. I've got a question with regards to Google Evergreen and with the recent update on Chrome. And I was wondering whether you have got any documentation regarding the JavaScript and how it's handled, and if there was any improvement on that from Google Evergreen in terms of how it does handle the additional JavaScript, how it is efficient.
It basically, so our web rendering service uses whatever is the current stable Chrome. So whenever that gets an improvement, then we're getting the same improvement. There's no difference. There's no special thing. There are small specific differences, and they are documented in our documentation at developers.google.com/search. There's like, I think it's now in advanced, and then JavaScript. There's like a bunch of information on how we're handling JavaScript. But it's pretty much the same as what we're doing. Like it works roughly the same way as it works in the normal Chrome. So there's no special treatment, no special. There are certain differences. For instance, we're not persisting local storage, session storage, or cookies. We are behaving different in certain very small but important ways. WebSockets are not properly supported. HTTP 2 is just coming now. It's an experimental feature that we are rolling out slowly, but the JavaScript processing and parsing and the V8 improvements are pretty much the exact same as we are running on rendering. It's Chrome 89 at this point, I think.
All right. Cool.
Does that answer the question?
I think so.
Awesome.
It's not really my question. It's from the dev team, so they're asking in terms of documentation. So
yeah, hold on. I can actually share. Yeah, well, okay. Let me actually find you the specific link to that part of our documentation because I know that it recently moved. I think it's in. Optimize your, no, that's not the one. Manage JavaScript content. Here we go. So this is the main, I'm going to share it here in the chat. This is the main guide. And from there on out, pretty much everything else is linked.
Thanks.
This is where the differences are. Most of them, anyway. There are small. I'm really excited that no one has caught one of the more interesting and surprising differences yet, but it doesn't really matter in 99.9% of the cases. Giacomo is smiling because he probably found something. Cache busting stuff. Yeah. I think I did not explain that. No. We do explain that you shouldn't use the cache, the text-based cache thing to test. So that's nice.
Oh, you're gonna rub it in, Martin. All right.
I'm so sorry. I just like I just read that sentence because it's I think it's on a like colored background or something. That's why I caught mad. Use long-lived caching. So we do talk about caching in some way, Giacomo. So just not the cache busting. I'm talking about the complete opposite, to be fair. So there's that. Sweet. That has been fun, and we are 30 minutes over. Do you have further questions? Because while I'm here, I might as well answer more questions. There's no further questions. Feel free to use the raise hand button.
Quick question.
Gabe.
Why not?
Yeah.
HTTP 2 advantages in JavaScript-based websites, maybe that we should be thinking about when we're talking to clients.
HTTP2 with its ups and downs. So at this point, I would not, but I would watch very closely for general availability of HTTP2 crawling, which has not rolled out yet. I think we are at 10%, 20%. I can't remember how many, what's the percentage of URLs that we're crawling with HTTP2. The big upside of HTTP2 is that you can multiplex through a single connection. So what happened on HTTP1 was you have a website, index.html, and then some style.css, and then some image.jpg, and maybe some header.jpg, and then some app.javascript. Each of these would have been transferred over a separate connection. Connection keep open or keep connection open or connection keep alive. That's what I was looking for. Connection keep alive would at least like avoid the tear down of the underlying TCP connection. Yay! Because what really happens is like your browser makes a request, so it finds a resource like index.html. Then it has to actually go to DNS to get the address behind the URL. Then it needs to establish a TCP connection, and then over this TCP connection, it actually does the HTTP negotiation, like sends a request, gets a response back. Yay. HTTPS makes that even slower because then you have a TLS connection on top of the TCP connection on which you then actually do the HTTP transfer. And Keep Alive made at least the TCP connection stay available, but you would still have to basically like, I think it was 6 connections at some point to the same thing. So it would open 6 connections. And then if you have more than 6 things, like the HTML, the 2 images that I spoke of, the JavaScript, the CSS, that's already 5. And then there's like 10 more images. And you would basically download them in bunches of 6. I think it has at some point been raised to 10, but that's pretty much it. With HTTP2, you have one single connection, and pretty much everything can like just smoothly flow into one connection, and then the browser will like tear it apart into the individual different bits and pieces, which means that domain sharding is not necessary if you use HTTP2. Domain sharding was exactly avoiding this problem where to example.com, there would only be 6 connections at a time. So you would move your images to image.example.com and your CSS to assets.example.com, same as your JavaScript, so that you can basically get all of these at the same time. But you don't need to do that if you have HTTP2. HTTP2 also has the push cache feature, which is widely recommended a bad idea. So I would not really invest in that. Anything else that is really cool at, I think it has pretty good compression enabled by default. It is binary, so it doesn't waste as much data. It pipelines, as I said, like it uses one connection to get all the assets. Yeah, that's pretty much it. HTTP2 is nice, but I don't think it's the revolutionary change in terms of SEO for Google search. It's not supported for all websites at this point. It will be in the near future.
Right, and you're not crawling yet in HTTP2, right? Is that what you said earlier?
We are crawling HTTP2 for a small percentage of websites, and we are about to ramp that up to 100% eventually, but we haven't done that yet. So like we are still in the experimental phase. For instance, I'm not sure if it has been resolved, but Search Console has a glitch when displaying information for HTTP2 crawled websites, which is hilarious. Gary is working on getting that resolved as far as I'm aware.
I mean, is it
sorry?
Is it a pure coincidence that you guys are having the page speed update around page speed load times, and then you're going to be crawling HTTP2?
That's a coincidence. That's a coincidence. The HTTP2 crawling started in December, if I remember correctly, or maybe November last year. So it is already in progress. The page speed or page experience is soon to come. We might get later than May, by the way. It's like unclear at this point. We'll see. And Giacomo adds a tip to the chat saying, if you want to keep domain charting for your HTTP 1.1 clients while using HTTP 2, I suggest to look at connection coalescing. I haven't actually heard that before. I need to read up on that. Cool. More work. Thanks, Giacomo, for sharing this tip. Cool stuff. All right.
One last question, or we are closing?
I think one last question is good.
Okay, while we are talking about HTTP2, that is from Googlebot to the internet, but internally there are differences. There are Chrome instances talking with Googlebot, and can we know what's the type of connection between the Chrome instances and Googlebot? Is HTTP 1.1, gRPC, or anything else?
It's gRPC, actually. Well, it's RPC. Let's call it RPC.
Yeah.
They are basically microservices to each other. So it's doing an RPC call, one that I'm very familiar with because I built an internal tool that uses. So the infrastructure that is the crawling infrastructure is called Trawler. The team is called something different because they also have another crawler infrastructure thing that is not what we're using. So Trawler is a microservice that we are talking to via RPC calls. So we basically like compile a proto buffer with all the information for the request that we want, throw that over to Trawler, and then a Trawler instance picks it up and works with that, and eventually comes back with a response.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have this office hour every 2 weeks, and I announce them on youtube.com/Google Search Central/community. Sweet, ladies and gents, it has been a huge pleasure. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Thanks for all the lovely questions. I hope that you are staying safe and healthy. And for those who are interested in the technical bits and bobs, Maria, Dave, Giacomo already know this. I'm Twitch streaming every Tuesday. I haven't done that yesterday because it was a holiday for me. I just took a day off after Easter. That was awesome. And we went diving, and we went in with sun and came out with snow, which was April, I guess. Not sure if climate change or just April. Yeah, see you either at the JavaScript SEO office hours in 2 weeks or on Tuesday for Twitch stream time where there's live coding. Awesome. Thanks a lot. Have a great time.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Martin. Bye, guys.